My name is Kelly Pindler. I am from Crypton Fabrics. So I'm really excited to be here. Thanks to Pindler for having us. We have a great collaboration that we're working on. Up here, you can have a little sneak peek of what is coming between the two of us. So we're really excited for you guys to kind of take a look at it. So today's course is called Mindful Performance, the New World of Interior Specification. So first, this is a little quote from our friend Avi over at Metropolis. We do a lot of work with Avi over at Metropolis. Those of you who have not listened to any of his webinars or heard him speak, he is an amazing speaker. He's just a brilliant man, and he does so much for the design community. He says, the thing about architects and designers is that the choices we make have a scale of influence in the world. We must work with the understanding that our choices are consequential. So some very, very true words spoken by Avi. I had the pleasure of spending some time with him out in Seattle, just bringing the design community together and just the conversations that spark. I think he just does a great job of just bringing the design world together. For those of you who don't know, this CEU is an SHW. So you will get credit for that. Some people need it, some people don't. If you self-report, that certificate will get you that certification as well. So let's get started. Here's a little bit of the course outline. We're going to talk a little bit about materiality, circularity, transparency. I think in this industry, especially this day and age with sustainability initiatives happening all over, I think it's very important that most companies talk about their transparency. You as designers need to be transparent, but so do the manufacturers. So we're going to dive into that a little bit deeper. And then myth busting and chemistry updates. We're going to talk about PFAS and just some myths that are out there. So we're going to bust those. And then we're going to talk about some of the non-toxic disinfection that exists out there, and a little bit about moisture barriers and how that plays a part in sustainability. And then beyond stains and spills, we'll talk a little bit about the new performance fabrics that are actively enhancing wellness, because it is all about wellness. And we want to give you some tips and tools, pardon me, today that are going to help you with those design selections, just making those mindful choices when it comes to enhancing wellness for others. Applying mindful aesthetics for human well-being, and then just a glimpse at the future, a little bit about the design optimism and what we see for the future. And throughout this, I think usually it works best if we wait till the end and ask your questions. But if you do have a question and you raise your hand, it's okay. Okay, so first let's talk about materiality, circularity, and transparency. I think it's important to talk about some of the groundwork. There's a lot of questions out there. So I think the first thing is communication. You got to be very upfront with your customers. You got to get that information out of them, because that communication is key. Because if there's some type of a barrier, if there's some type of conflict right off the beginning, that is where we need to just make sure that the lines of communication are extremely open. Who is responsible for what? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. What is a designer's responsibility, but it's not all on the designers. It's also on the manufacturer. So we're going to delve into that a little bit. And then lastly, how can the design industry affect positive change? So again, there's collaborative efforts that we can all do to make this a better place. So designer's responsibilities. So here are some touch points. Be informed, inform your clients, set attainable goals, specify with care, and then sharing that information. So the first tip, being informed. This is one of the primary considerations when you are doing purpose-driven design. Because once you have that information, it falls on you, right, to inform your client. So you guys have to gather all this information. It's a lot to gather. But it's up to you to get that information to your clients. And there's various ways to get informed. There's things like these CEUs. There's webinars. There's resources. There's trade shows. There's just a slew of different things that you can do to get that information. Another one is your goals. you have to just make sure that you are, have those attainable, achievable goals. Setting those high goals are great. We all have those reach goals that we want to achieve, but you do have to ask yourself, is that truly attainable? It's all good in theory, but once you go to execute it, you have all the proper tools in place to actually obtain that goal. So you want to set yourself up for success. We are all here as manufacturers and reps to help you guys succeed. Specifying with care. So, just being mindful of the products that you are going to place into when you're specifying projects. There's so much in the means of wellness that we're going to talk about today, but there's a lot to consider. It's not just always these beautiful, as you see here from Pindler, these beautiful fabrics. There's a lot that goes into it, that most people who are going to be occupying these spaces don't even realize how this is contributing to their overall well-being. So, and lastly, sharing information. Social media, social media is good and bad. But there is a lot of delightful things that you can post there. There's a lot of things that, if you are an expert in any field, feel free to share that. Don't hold on to that information. If you have that, be a mentor to someone, because I think that's what this industry, I think it just really resonates with me. All the people who are so generous. It's not like I have this brilliant idea and, I'm not going to tell you. It's like, oh my God, guess what? I got this new designer. I got this new fabric. Everybody wants to share. There's so much out there that we can do. So it goes a little bit above and beyond. So, feel free to take that information, get involved in panels. Again, you're an expert, share that information on some type of platform, not just social media. I always go off on little tangents, so pardon me. Okay. So the designer's responsibilities. Watch your inbox. Yes, we all get inundated with several emails, but every once in a while there's some really, it's not all spam. There's some really good information that even comes in my inbox that, that is just talking about whether it be sustainability, wellness, things in our design industry that, I don't want to miss. So I'm glad that we actually do get those emails. Sometimes it's like, you want to just click delete, and clean out your inbox, but there's some valuable information that does filter through. Sandow, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Sandow. So they own Interior Design Magazine, Metropolis Magazine, Think Tank, Material Bank, all those things. They have a slew of information on their websites. Even the Design Center here, they have all this valuable information. They are the ones who, bring this to light. So there's lots of different ways that you can get that information. It's just sometimes it is on you, sometimes it's on others, how you get that information. Back to the attainable goals. So even the best sustainability design firms, they're not perfect. I like to say progress over perfection. Yes, we would love to be a perfectionist. We all, a lot of people feel that they are, but is it realistic? You have to really ask yourself. They're all, again, good in theory, but you just have to make sure that these goals that you are going to try to achieve for yourself, that are true to your values, that it is going to benefit the customer, and that you can actually reach those goals. 60% of projects from Interior Design Sustainable Giants list of top commercial design firms are already meeting sustainable criteria. So, most designers that I talk to on the contract side, it's coming around on the residential side as far as sustainability and those options. But on the contract side, if any of you do any work on the contract side, I think most design firms are just, incorporating a sustainability of some type, because a lot of people are paying attention to what's happening in the world, and we all want things to be better, whether it's the PFAS, whether it's there's so many different things, but I think that percentage is a little bit higher. So let's shift over to the manufacturer's responsibility. So I think the number one key for a manufacturer, especially me being from Crypton, I think that's why I have been there for over 11 years, is their transparency. Again, I said earlier, when I talked about the beautiful fabrics, there's so much more that goes into making a selection of a fabric. Just if a company can be transparent, if they're trying to hide something, it always comes out, right? You're always going to hear about it, whether it be on social media, whether it be a blogger blasting them. Just come out with it. It's just like if you guys ask me a question and I don't know the answer, I'm not going to BS my way out of it. I'm just going to say, you know what, I don't know right now, but I do have the resources available that I can get you that answer. So I think it's just key. You want to be authentic, right? Most contract grade furnishings and finish providers have adopted these basic principles. Research and innovation, I think that is something to look for too. You've got some mom and pop shops that, might not be able to do all of that, but there's other things that they can do. They can talk about the small initiatives that they are taking in the right step to make that environmental footprint. But there's companies that have been around in the performance fabric industry that have been developing these things for the past 30 years. So they want continuous improvement. They want to be better. So, just because you have a good product, you don't need to stay here, right? You want to just keep, progressively getting better. Third-party certification. So, that's just not a certificate. You just want to make sure, everybody can have a certificate, but, there's other things that go into that. Whether it be a Green Guard Gold certification, we're going to talk a little bit about that, but just making sure they're doing their due diligence at telling you, hey, this is what our company does. This is how our manufacturers processes our goods. So, again, you want to be making sure that everybody has that mindful materials checks and balances in place. So Green Guard Gold certified. So these are some other things that I won't go over this whole list, but that are on the responsibility of the manufacturer. So these are just some best practices when you are looking at performance fabrics. Green Guard Gold certified. You can look for a big test is the California Standard Section 01350 that tests indoor air quality. One thing I did want to mention about the Green Guard Gold seal is that it tests for over 10,000 harmful emissions. So it's not just like a onesies and twosies. It's a very expensive test to do. It's very extensive. So, I know that my company has all of our products have that. So that's a good seal to look for. And I know when you go on a lot of fabrics, you might not see it on the tags, on the back of the sample tags. This is where you might have to delve a little bit deeper. I'll go to their website to see if they actually have this. A lot of the specs on the back or online will all have this information. So Green Guard Gold certified, that's something to look for. VOCs, those are gases that are emitted by various products. Does somebody have a question? Oh, I thought I heard something, sorry. Which can contribute to indoor air pollution. Those have been associated with adverse health effects, like respiratory issues, allergies, things like that. So there's a certification process for that. So, those are things that you want to hear about. If you have a huge environmental, belief and stance, and that's something that's, true to your core values, then look into that. Make sure that the product that you're going to be specifying meets all that criteria. Some other best practices are looking at reduced water, electricity, and natural gas consumption, reduce CO2, those are carbon emissions, and then even like recycling. What are they doing for the recycling? There's all those little things that you can do. It doesn't have to be this grand, thing that you're doing. And all those little simple steps, make up the bigger picture. So just making sure, you got fabric scraps. What are you doing with them? Are you putting them in the landfill? Why? Because, they're not going to break down. So why not just donate them? There's companies out there that have programs. I know there's a company that I work with down in North Carolina. They'll take a lot of their remnants or their old products if they can't donate it to a school or something for projects. They'll make quilts out of them. And then they take them to, less fortunate areas, and they have these quilts and these blankets that are, being used. So it's just little things like that, I think, just kind of set these manufacturers apart from one another. Okay, so ToxNot, this is another test that really just shows integrity of manufacturers. Again, not everybody is on board, not everybody has to do it, but it's just that extra step that some companies, as you see up here on the screen, are taking. And ToxNot is basically, I like to say it's like a hub, like a database. So it's doing all the checks and balances for you. So if there's some new regulations and new standards, what it does is it, computes everything against your product list. You have to put a lot of proprietary information in there. You don't have to put every single thing in there because then your goods aren't proprietary, right? So it kind of does that legwork for you. So if if say a company had some type of chemistry in there and it was red listed. So this, would kick back and say, hey, your ingredients per this regulation for this state, this government guideline would be kicked back. So again, it's just a really good database. It just kind of structures everything. And it just, holds integrity for, I think, all of these people who are utilizing ToxNot. Some other things that you can ask for as designers are HPDs, the Health Product Declaration. Those, the last couple years, I would say that I have had some requests for it. That's a whole complex system too, but, there's pursuing these sustainable building certificates like LEED, WELL, Clean Production, BIFMA, that can increase your billable hours. So, providing these HPDs, can help you get to that point. So the Health Product Declaration Collaborative, that's a whole website that you can go to and also obtain some more information on that because you can go down a rabbit hole. I know we like to go a rabbit hole on social media and TikTok and those things, but if you ever get in that little, smartsy phase and you just want to learn more about that, it is quite intriguing because you can put whatever you are looking for, you can check the box and it'll filter out the products that you are looking for. So it's actually quite interesting. So companies that invest in testing, I think, is very important too. Again, that holds the integrity, consistency of the product, and it really helps their claims towards these sustainability initiatives. I think another useful tip is what are these manufacturers are doing to be a part of the solution? They are a lot of times the problem, right? The products that they're putting out are putting bad things in the air or whatever it may be. But what are they doing to be a solution to this problem? How are they taking initiatives? What kind of boards are they on? Associations are they affiliated with? I think those, again, are all little steps that you take to create a bigger picture, a better story for the manufacturer. The design community's commitment. So going beyond all these basics, an increasing number of companies in the design space are embracing bigger, faster, more powerful ways to make a difference. But several of these companies have been doing the right thing for years, even though it's legislated as they need to do it now. One last thought on this topic. I think there are many other entities involved in making sustainable design a workable real-life practice for you designers. They're stepping up in ways that we've mentioned before, but it bears to mention that these entities with design education, design media, environmental science, they do need to bear some of the responsibility. Like I said, they're creating the problem, so let's be a solution to the problem, or at least provide the solutions to these problems, that the designers are noticing, that the world is noticing. It's really a team effort. It's a synergy between the design community and the manufacturers. It's not you over here on an island and them over here on an island. It's like we are all going for the same goal, so let's all work together. And any time that, what I like to hear from when I'm out into the design community is like, what are you looking for? Yes, I have beautiful fabrics to show you, but what are some other things that are of interest and important to you that you're not seeing from these manufacturers? And it goes back to that communication that I talked about in the beginning. You really have to just be transparent. If you're seeing something that our company's not doing, we can't fix if we don't know, right? So we love to see you guys, you guys are the voices. We want to hear what you have to say. So next, let's go on to myth busting and chemistry updates. So the myth is performance fabrics are made using harmful PFAS chemistry. True or false? Anybody? Okay, good. The truth is PFAS-free performance fabrics are becoming commonplace. PFAS-free designations on product labels and brand websites are easy to spot. So, there's a couple times you can go through social media, you can go through different articles in publications, and there's always some type of scare headline that says, do you know what you're sitting on? I know that was a few years ago. Is your sofa safe? What you're sitting on, and then of course you read the article. The tagline, it makes it scary. Like, oh my God, what am I sitting on? Is it toxic? Am I going to die? What's happening? But as you go into it, it's a good story. Yes, here's where we were, but here is where we are at today. So, you got to be wary of those headlines. Kind of buyer beware. But just making sure, there's so many things happening in the performance category with innovation. So, again, it's up to us manufacturers to relay that information to you guys, but, it's out there. All right, let's talk a little bit about PFAS. So I'm not sure if all of you know what PFAS are. So PFAS essentially is a fluorine, and it is the only element that will repel oil-based stains. So there's a lot of technologies out there that have discovered that, hey, yes, fluorine does repel oil-based stains, but you know what? We're toying around and we don't even need this PFAS in there. It's going to repel, it's going to release the stains. It might necessarily repel it, but it is going to help release those stains. So some typical claims right here you can see are stain resistance, repellent proof, oil resistant, repellent proof, water resistant, heat resistance, non-sticking coating, long-lasting, like for makeup. And some typical products that are impacted are paper and food, pizza boxes, coffee cups, cookware. And these are things where PFAS lives, right? PFAS is in everything. I mean, it's in your, it's in mascara, it's in your cookware, it's on your cell phone. I mean, it is everywhere. So, hadn't been for the headlines, I probably years ago wouldn't have known about it. It's like, I'm not a science guru. I have learned to take an interest in science, but there's just so much out there. But getting the right information, getting the facts, right, in so many stories is very important. So I'm going to take you through a couple of these slides. So again, that's one of the things to look for. I think it's just a good common rule to make sure that all fabrics are PFAS free. Like Pindler fabrics, all of their fabrics are PFAS free, which we'll talk about after the show here. So there's other things that you can look for. But this I thought I'd share with you guys too. It's a legislation timeline. So it's not just me up here saying, hey, PFAS, you should get rid of it. There is legislation out there that is mandating this. So you can see here that there's another, I think I have another slide in a minute, but that talks about the different products. But what's interesting, in 2032, which really isn't that far away, right? Maine, Minnesota, and Colorado are banning all products. So it means all products that have PFAS cannot come in and cannot go out. There's nothing going to exist. So, you're already starting to see the shift in companies do that. I think me on social media, when I'm on there, I find all these clean products. So, just getting rid of all of the phthalates, the PFAS. So it is happening. It's a good shift, right? Because we're all want to be well, right? And so, if these products are not going to make us well in the long run, then so be. Take it out. Just make sure that my product can perform. There is a little race between Maine and Minnesota, because I was like, Minnesota, I just didn't think of them, but I forget 3M is there. 3M is the one that's like, hey, everybody thinks that we're this huge, putting all this chemistry in our goods. So that's why they're really trying to make that initiative like, hey, no, we're not. We're just a big guy doing great things. So I found that one interesting. And then here's another slide for the PFAS targeting the furniture products and things. And this, if you guys ever want more of this information, I do have it. These slides will be available. We can just chit chat if you want all this fun stuff. This is just some legislation outside of the US, what's happening in Canada and Europe. And then again, this is just more detailed information from that timeline that talks about, the ban of sales of what they are actually getting rid of. So again, this is something that is on, the government website. So this is where we have pulled a lot of this information from. So what to look for? So when you are trying to specify a fabric and you want to make sure that it doesn't have PFAS in it, a lot of these back of the samples, these are some contract fabrics. So a lot of them will just put it on there as no PFAS, PFAS free. Everybody does it a little bit differently. As long as they are putting it on there, that is what we want to be mindful of. And two, everybody has their standards on what they put on the back of memo samples. That space is only so big. But it's just a quick conversation. If, again, you're concerned about PFAS and you don't want them in your projects, just ask the rep, ask the showroom manager. Somebody will have that information, and it most likely will be posted on the brand's website. So this is always a good myth. So riddle me this: performant fabrics never need to be cleaned. Hence, many people think they're self-cleaning. True or false? Okay, good. I was going to get worried there. I was like, no, not this class. Regular maintenance performant fabrics keeps them looking good. So, it doesn't take a lot. Performance fabrics are meant to be easily cleaned. They are not self-cleaning. I kid you not, I get that question probably every 3 to 6 months. Like, oh my gosh, I have a performance fabric. It's failed. I'm like, what do you mean it's failed? I'm like, did you clean it? They're like, no, it cleans itself. I was like, really? Okay. It's just like, yeah, you just have to. There's simple instructions out there that manufacturers provide. All the cleaning codes and things like that are on the back of most memo samples, but it doesn't clean itself. So let's talk a little bit about cleaning. So these are some basic cleaning codes to look for. So you've got W for water-based cleaners, and then you've got S for solvent cleaners. When you think of water-based cleaners, think of a enzyme-based solution. Like I have one up here. You can see it's clear. You can mix Tide, Dawn dish soap, anything with water. That's an enzyme-based product that you can use for the water-based cleaners. When you see S for solvent cleaners, that's more of your dry cleaning. So think of, needs to be specially treated. Most things you want to look for is WS or SW on your samples. And again, this is going to get a little more complex. We're not going to talk about today, but the fiber type. The fiber type is going to determine what codes that you have on your fabrics. All right, moving right along. So, defining clean. So a lot of people think like, okay, yes, things are surface clean. Yes, to sanitize, it's, we killed the bacteria. But you really want to make sure things are disinfected, right? Because that is going to kill off that bacteria and the viruses. So it's not just going to surface clean and sanitize. You really, think of it as deep cleaning, right? So next, we're going to talk about disinfecting safely and without guesswork. I don't know where the K went for that. So most CEUs, you cannot talk about your own product, but because Crypton is the first and only performance fabric that is EPA listed disinfectable. It's 100% certain your fabric is going to be disinfectable if you specify Crypton barrier fabric. So we've had this product, this disinfectant deodorizer, around for 17 years. And we work very closely with the EPA. And how we develop this is, got the certification from the EPA, is when you have our Crypton products and then you have the barrier on the back, barrier meaning nothing's going to penetrate through the cushions, that is a non-porous surface because nothing penetrates through, right? So that's why we have this product when used in conjunction with only our barrier product. So this is kind of a little side. This is all residential stuff over here. But if you were to have a contract specification and you had that barrier product and use this non-harsh disinfectant and deodorizer, it is going to disinfect and deodorize your products. Do you have to use that to have a Crypton barrier product? Absolutely not. There's other measures out there. Bleach, again, it goes back to the fiber type. But again, we get to talk about this in the CEU because we are the only that have that disinfectable deodorizer with our barrier products. So a little fun fact. We aren't going to dive too deep into that today. So beyond spills and stains, we're going to talk about the breakthrough performance fabrics that are actively impacting health and well-being. So back in 2022, Innovation Forward Brands created the first naturally energy radiant woven performance upholstery fabrics. It's offered to designers through trade show rooms only. So let's go to this next slide. Here we go. So innovation being one of the manufacturer's responsibilities that we talked about earlier, the newest fabrics go beyond spill, stain, and odor and protection. These are the first and only naturally energy radiant woven performance fabrics. So what are these? We're going to talk about that. So these are some of the materials that are sourced in a treatment called Sealant. I don't know how many of you have heard of Sealant. So it is a brand that this is their technology. So with this textile innovation, any piece of upholstery furniture can have the potential for providing health benefits. So this goes back to our health and wellness. If you were to use it residentially, designers, you can, say you're doing a movie room, whether it be work from home or napping, they all present opportunities to boost wellness. Where you're simply laying down or curling up, it just means it's another means of self-care that we're going to get to. Commercially, think of a spa. If you had a chase covered in the fabric, it's going to provide infrared benefits that are going to be similar to a sauna, but you'll have that comfort and that ease of just being in that relaxing room by yourself. In an office setting, you can add these layers of wellness just to a desk chair. So by allowing the discrete incorporation of this infrared technology that we're going to talk about into everyday life and combining it with the stain and protection capabilities, you're going to have that ultimate cleanability factor. They're going to be soft, inviting fabrics. These are some of the ways that manufacturers are doing their due diligence. They're trying to be innovative. They're trying to bring products that are not only good for the environment, but they are good for human well-being. So again, there's lots that you can do by simply just, understanding what's available to you for your products that you're choosing. So here is how this works. At rest, the body naturally emits 60% of its heat, of its body heat, which is enough to power a 100-watt light bulb, which I just think that's crazy. So the fabric reflects the site and recycles the heat back as energy that's absorbed at the cellular level. So, you can see the whole process here. And then clinical tests have proven that infrared energy does improve cell oxygenation, local circulation, and it does hasten the cell recovery. So it's a pretty cool concept. The Celient brand often goes to different trade shows, and I have to tell you, I had wristbands. I used to run marathons, and right before I was running a marathon, he gave me socks, and he gave me wristbands, and I was like, I don't know why, but I think I did so good because of those things. There is something to say about it, seeing is believing. You got to kind of experiment with yourself to see how much you believe in these products, right? So when this bioreactive technology works by reflecting a user's natural body heat back to them as infrared energy, it's essentially improving cellular oxygenation, local circulation, which results in wellness benefits that can range from faster recovery times, improved sleep, increased energy. Hence, that's why I ran so fast in my marathon in Detroit. I don't know. But again, this is all born out of science. This isn't just, shooting darts in a boardroom. There's actually science that backs all of this data up. So feel free to look at Celient and the product information when you're getting, and just because you know that these are tested and they're approved products. So all available for you. So next we're going to talk about some of the aesthetic benefits. But it's just cool to think that you can have a health benefit. You don't need to plug in. Usually it's like you got to plug this in to get the the red light therapy or a sauna. There's things that you can do. So anything that can happen naturally with the synergy of fabric and the body, I think is just kind of a cool thing. And then one thing I did want to note, even those Celient products that are out there, those are all Green Gold certified too. So you kind of get a lot of bang for your buck. All right, moving right along. So applying mindful aesthetics for human well-being. All right, here we go. So textures that soothe. Is that my cue? I heard music. I'm like, is that my cue to stop talking? So textures that soothe. So really, it's really about low stimulation but high design. So you can see you got textures over here on the right, and then you got a space over here. That it does have low stimulation. There's not a lot going on in it. In memory care facilities, designers use texture to help bridge the cognitive gaps where eyesight might be compromised. So I think we learned during the pandemic years ago that, when you couldn't see and touch these fabrics, it's different. Everybody wants to touch and feel things. So there is something that goes with textures that soothe. There's science, again, behind all of that. So thoughtful layering and combining soft tactile textures, it's an important element when designing for wellness. The sense of touch is a powerful tool. It helps you soothe, it helps you relax. And touch is the first sense that we develop in the womb that is largely responsible for our feeling of security and safety. You guys have been designing with and putting these layers and textures in place for quite some time. But research suggests that texture that adds beauty can also help you craft interiors and boost well-being. So, there's a lot of benefits. Most people who are occupying these space have no idea what went into this project. Which, sidebar, I think it's always cool when I see designers on Instagram or TikTok doing their little stories of why they designed the space the way that they did it, what products went into it. I think those are valuable, testimonials that you can give, just to kind of tell your story. I think it's a bigger picture. Textures that soothe. So here we have velvet. I think when we think of velvet, we think of luxurious. It's soft, it's comfortable, it's inviting. So it's hard to resist the softness and smoothness that is inherent in velvet. It gives you the feeling of relaxation. It sparks positive emotions, whether it be you want to cozy up on that little sofa right there. The uniquely smooth texture of velvet also engages in that sense of touch. So, again, you want to touch it. Like, does anybody not want to touch velvet? So this heightened sensory can actually result in a more active awareness of one's overall surroundings. So colors that calm. Here we've got some blues featured. They all kind of have that calming force from nature. The rise of biophiliac design and some other nature-forward disciplines really brings those sea colors to the design forefront. So workplace educational design environments, yes, they all a lot of times use blue, but there's actually, with the color of blue, there's calming properties. So, it stimulates mental clarity, awareness, productivity. So, there's lots of things that, like I said, that go into these colors that you choose rather than, they like blue, your customer likes blue. But, I think it's kind of cool too when you tell them like, hey, this is what the color blue does. It's going to enhance this, that, and the other. So it's all about the storytelling. So softness that nurtures. So again, this is just kind of a calm area. You can see, you can bring in some of the elements of nature, right? Whether it be some wood tones, some clay features, whatever it is, but those are all elements of the outdoors that are also going to provide a feeling of balance and create that sense of well-being. So we're going to go to that little soft, relax, and then we're going to go to patterns that energize. So I used to have a different slide up here that was a really bold, fun print, but Lord knows where that slide went. So patterns that energize. So, these are happy, whimsical, but, when you see these in places, it just kind of embarks on, the emotion of joy, right? You get excited like, oh, wow, I have these bright pink pants, and I call them my happy pants because they do. When I put them on, I'm like, there's something about it, right? Saturated colors that draw attention. So let's talk a little bit about the saturated colors. Those are what stimulates the brain's visual system. So you can see that we've got some bright colors on the right-hand side with the water beating up, but also the red on the walls. It's very vibrant. But again, there's science behind that as well. Having these bold saturated colors is really going to affect the memory of this person who occupies the space. They're more able to recall, and just make it a more memorable moment when you use these bright saturated colors. Again, just mindful, obviously of what your client is looking for, what the project, if it's all about wellness. There's many attributes to think about when selecting these fabrics. Next, we have nostalgia. So I think it's always cool when you can go into a space and, it sparks some type of emotion, right? Like these old, this is called Chessie, this fabric right here. It does, it takes you back. It's just kind of a throwback little phase. For me, just this image throws me back with those Reeboks right there. You young kids over there probably don't even know what those little Reeboks, they were very fashionable back in the day. I actually think they're making a comeback. But there's so much, whether it be physiological, there's neurological responses when you do go into these spaces that you designers have created that spark that nostalgia. Most of it is good. Most of them are positive emotions. You have that pleasure and reward. So again, you don't realize how much control that you have over people occupying these spaces for their wellness and their well-being. So whether you want just a light touch or really just go all out, I think just using any type of nostalgia pieces is an amazing thing. Okay, we're almost done here. So design optimism and award on market demand. So our friend Allison says, the future is people wanting healthier places to live and work. So I think that is true. The growing demand for sustainability goods, for health and wellness products that exist in our design industry is just growing rapidly. So it's nothing that's going to go away. It's just going to keep on growing. And then here's just for the contract market, you can see the ESG, which is the environmental, social, and corporate governance. It's a goal that are held by many. 37% of contract design clients are asking specifically for ESG criteria. So I think that number, as I travel the country, has increased. It's just becoming a hot topic. Everybody wants to talk about it. Most people are, trying to get on board and doing what they can to make that environmental footprint for their company. And then for the luxury residential market, you can see the global wellness real estate market size was worth around $279.4 billion in 21. And it's estimated to grow to about 863.9 by 2028. So over this time frame, numerous projects that convert existing structures into greener ones will really drive the rise of the wellness real estate market. So you can see there's lots of things that are happening. Material transparency, social justice balance, handcraft and circularity. Those are all hot topics that I think a lot of people are talking about these days. So whether it doesn't matter what market you're in, whether it's residential or contract, I think the overall being is that, hey, we all want to do and see better. So the purchasing power of designers. So leadership from designers will come in the form of speaking through your purchasing choices, right? So, your designs are your voice. Yes, you do have voices, but just the choices that you make in your design projects are really going to be powerful. It's both an opportunity and a choice. So I think simply put, over the next decade, you guys can really, your specs are really going to change the world and how everybody perceives these spaces. So design optimism, knowing the demand that lies ahead. I think you, as designers, you can be cautiously optimistic. You just got to really pay attention to the market conditions because we know, back to the pandemic, that things can change, right? Your whole world. A lot of people were doing, contracts. They went to the residential side. So there's lots of shifts that happen, but again, everybody is able to pivot. But the fact remains that sustainable, purpose-driven design, it's both a challenge and an opportunity. And I think it can be bigger than, it could possibly be the biggest opportunity that you might have in your career to make that purpose-driven design project, right? Gathering all those facts, taking the initiative, if it's not already happening in your projects right now. Resilience will be required to realize your finished designs, ensuring that the result is exciting, it's welcoming, it's beautiful, it's really about healing and it has that foundation for wellness. Some designers will continue the path of optimism in design. They'll talk about social equity in design, but really being the benchmark setters are what is going to inspire the manufacturers. So I mentioned before, we need to hear from you. We need to collaborate together. Like, what is missing that you aren't seeing to make these changes for the products? And lastly, our friend Robert has said, design creates culture, culture shapes values, and values determine the future. So, that's true. You guys have the potential to create that culture. So it's just exciting to see, as designers, how you evolve and just to follow you. I mean, I know as a manufacturer, it's always exciting to see what the designers are coming up with, but just to hear their stories of how they've come along and where they're going, and to take us on board on that journey, right? So, we are here for you. And hopefully you guys have joined or have gained some valuable information here today. I know there was a lot to learn and to talk about. So at this point, that is all I have for you guys today. I don't know if any of you have the IDCEC app. If any of you do have the app, did I get the little QR code on there? I sure did. Feel free, you can scan that. Otherwise, like I said, I usually email, everybody usually wants an email copy, a PDF of their certificate, but I will get you guys that information. And at this time, if anybody has any questions,